All right, so today we're diving into Islamic finance.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at this YouTube documentary called Islamic Finance, Tradition Meets Modern Banking.
Right.
And, it's got all these interviews with experts and scholars and even just everyday people who
Yeah.
are using this system.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And right away, the documentary kind of throws out this question.
Well,
Can a financial system that's like really grounded in religious principles actually offer a real alternative to the kind of volatile, Western models
Right.
that we're all used to?
yeah, because we always think of like faith and finance as being two separate things.
Cool.
But maybe before we get too far into it,
Sure.
could you just break down some of the basic principles for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Islamic finance, it's built on a few key ideas.
Okay.
One of the most fundamental is that it prohibits interest, which is known as riba.
Yep.
And in Islamic finance, interest is considered exploitative, like you're profiting off of someone else's need.
Gotcha.
Instead, it really focuses on this idea of fairness and shared risk.
Okay, so let's say I need a loan to buy a car.
Okay.
How would that work in Islamic finance
Right.
as opposed to just going to a regular bank?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So in a conventional bank, you would borrow money and pay it back with interest over time, right?
Right.
In Islamic finance, the bank might actually buy the car directly and then sell it to you at a higher price,
Okay.
but with a payment plan.
Gotcha.
So you would know the total cost up front and there's no compounding interest or anything like that.
Okay.
It's more like a partnership than just a lender-borrower relationship.
So it's more about financing the purchase itself, not lending money with the added interest.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing that the documentary talked about was this emphasis on tangible assets.
Right.
What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, so basically it means that Islamic finance, it really encourages investments in real-world things,
Okay.
actual projects, businesses,
Okay.
rather than just abstract financial instruments.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Instead of investing in a company's stock price, which can go up and down like crazy,
Yeah.
you'd be investing in something concrete, something real, like building a new factory or a development project that helps the community.
Oh, so it's not just about numbers on a screen.
Right.
It's about investing in something you can actually see and touch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a much more grounded approach, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And this also ties into that idea of avoiding excessive speculation.
Totally.
Islamic finance is about ethical investing, right?
Yeah, it emphasizes activities that are actually benefiting society
Okay.
and contributing to real economic growth.
Yeah, this isn't some brand new idea.
Right.
The documentary mentions that modern Islamic finance,
Yeah.
it kind of emerged in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, around that time.
What was driving that development?
Well, there was a growing demand from Muslims for financial products and services that actually align with their faith.
Right.
But what's really interesting is that the growth of Islamic finance, it was actually kind of fueled by some of those big crises that rocked the Western financial world.
Oh, you mean the 2008 financial crisis?
Exactly.
So you're saying that when things went haywire
Yeah.
in the conventional system,
Yeah.
people started looking for something more stable.
Precisely those crises, they really exposed how vulnerable the traditional system was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, they started to view Islamic finance as this more ethical and potentially more stable option.
Oh.
And the numbers kind of back that up. We're talking over $1 trillion Australian
Wow.
in assets managed globally.
Okay.
And in those Gulf Cooperation Council countries,
Yeah.
Islamic finance has a 22% market share.
Huh.
This is not some niche movement anymore.
Yeah, those are some serious numbers.
Yeah, it's growing rapidly.
It's not just focused on one region, right?
Right, yeah.
The documentary explores how Islamic finance
Yeah.
is taking root in different parts of the world.
All over the place, yeah.
But are there different approaches depending on where you are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The documentary takes us to Turkey, for example.
Yeah.
And we encounter this fascinating group that they call
Okay.
Islamic Calvinists.
Islamic Calvinists. Okay, now you got to explain that word.
I know, right? It sounds like a contradiction.
Yeah.
But it's this really fascinating blend of deep religious values
Okay.
with this sharp business sense.
Well-
These entrepreneurs are really driving Turkey's economic growth, and they're doing it in a way that aligns with their faith.
Okay.
They're innovating and finding ways to succeed within that framework of Islamic principles.
So they're proving that faith and finance can actually coexist
Yes,
and even thrive together.
yeah, it's really inspiring to see.
And that brings us back to that core question.
Yeah.
Is Islamic finance a genuine alternative?
Right.
Or is it just like a different flavor of the same system?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
And it gets even more interesting when you look at the Gulf states,
Okay.
which have traditionally relied more on that Western-style financing.
Right.
They're now trying to shift towards Islamic models,
Okay.
but it's not without its challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the documentary definitely doesn't shy away from those challenges,
No, it doesn't.
especially when it
Right.
comes to the issue of guest workers in the Gulf.
Right.
It seems like their situation really puts a spotlight on this question
Hmm.
of whether Islamic finance is living up to its ethical ideals in every context.
You're absolutely right. It highlights that even with good intentions,
Mhm.
translating those ethical principles into practice
Yeah.
in a complex global economy,
Yeah.
it's incredibly difficult.
Right.
And that's something that we're going to delve into even further as we continue
Yeah.
our deep dive.
Sounds good. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back to it. The documentary spends quite a bit of time with those,
The Islamic Calvinists?
the Islamic Calvinists in Turkey.
Yeah, yeah.
It paints a pretty interesting picture of how they actually do business.
It does. And one of the guys they feature is this entrepreneur named T. Naken.
Oh, yeah.
He runs this textile company called Milky Textiles.
Okay.
That's based on Islamic principles.
Yeah, but didn't he say something about how, sometimes he has to bend the rules a little?
He did.
Especially when it comes to interest?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's interesting because he tries his best to finance his investments through saving and, profits from his business.
Right.
But sometimes the reality is that he has to take out conventional loans with interest.
Yeah, I can imagine that creates a real conflict for him.
Oh, absolutely. You can see it on his face when he talks about it.
Yeah.
He's really uncomfortable with the idea.
Right.
But at the same time, he understands that sometimes
You got to make those tough choices.
keep your business going.
Yeah, exactly. To keep things afloat.
But his company, Milky Textiles, seems to be doing pretty well.
It is. They employ thousands of people.
Wow.
They run multiple shifts a day.
Okay.
They export all over the world.
Uh-huh.
And they're generating millions in revenue.
That's impressive.
It is. And what's remarkable is that he's found a way to be successful
Okay.
while also staying true to his values.
Yeah. The documentary showed how he provides prayer rooms for his
Right.
employees and
Right.
supports the local community.
Yeah, he really seems to care about the well-being of his workers
Hmm.
and the impact his business has on society.
Yeah, it's a great example of what they were calling enlightened Islam.
Yeah, enlightened Islam.
This idea that you can balance your faith
Yeah.
with economic success
Yeah.
and social responsibility.
It's not an either thing.
Yeah, it's a more holistic approach
Exactly.
where profit isn't the only thing driving your decisions. Yeah, and the documentary suggests that this kind of mindset,
Yeah.
it's actually pretty common in the
Good.
Anatolian business community.
Interesting. So they have a strong tradition of philanthropy then.
Yeah, they invest in things like schools and hospitals,
Okay.
infrastructure.
Hmm.
It's really interesting to see that contrast with the more individualistic,
Right.
profit-driven mentality
Yeah.
that we see in Western capitalism.
And let's not forget Zakaria Josen,
Oh, yeah, Zakaria.
the quality control manager at Milky Textiles.
Yeah, what a story.
His story was so inspiring.
He went from being an untrained worker
Yeah.
from a small village
Right.
to holding this key position
Yeah.
in a thriving company.
It's amazing.
It really shows the potential of ethical business practices
Yeah.
to create opportunities and upward mobility.
Yeah, he didn't get there through handouts or shortcuts.
No, he earned it through hard work and dedication.
And the company gave him that platform to do that.
Exactly.
So it seems like everyone benefits in that scenario.
Right. The company succeeds, the
Yeah.
employee succeeds,
Yeah.
and the community as a whole benefits from that economic growth and social mobility.
It's a good reminder that economic success and social responsibility,
Yeah.
they don't have to be at odds with each other.
They can actually work together.
Yeah, and reinforce each other.
Exactly. Create a virtuous cycle.
But then the documentary takes us back to the Gulf states.
Right. Back to the Gulf.
And the situation there,
Yeah.
especially for the guest workers.
It's very different.
It's so different from what we see in Turkey.
Yeah.
It raises some tough questions
Definitely.
about whether Islamic finance can really live up to its ideals
Mm.
in a region with so much economic inequality.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the most valuable things about the documentary is
Oh,
that it doesn't shy away from the complexities,
Yeah.
the contradictions.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront the fact that even with good intentions,
Right.
putting those ethical principles into practice,
Yeah.
it's messy. Yeah.
It's challenging.
It's like the documentary is saying, look, Islamic finance isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
It's a journey.
It's a process.
Yeah, a process of trying to do things better.
Yeah.
But there are going to be bumps along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that journey requires a lot of self-reflection and a willingness to challenge the status quo,
Okay.
both from within the Islamic finance community
Yeah.
and from society as a whole.
Right. And the documentary gives us glimpses of that struggle. It's like we see scholars grappling with tough questions about how to apply these ancient principles to modern financial products.
Yeah, like how do you actually do that in a way that's authentic?
Yeah, and we see business leaders trying to balance their desire for profit with that commitment to ethical conduct.
Right, because those two things can sometimes be in tension.
Yeah. And one of the people we meet in Dubai is Inam.
Yeah.
He's an Indian Muslim businessman.
Right.
And he seemed to have a pretty pragmatic view of the whole thing. He acknowledged that, at the end of the day, business is about making money, regardless of your religion.
Right.
But he also emphasized the importance of trust and ethical conduct in all your dealings.
Yeah, I remember he said something about how he trusts a verbal agreement with his Muslim business partner more than a written contract with someone outside that circle.
That really stood out to me, too.
Yeah.
It speaks to the importance of relationships
Right.
and shared values in Islamic finance.
Yeah, it's not just about ticking boxes and following rules.
No, it's about building trust
Yeah.
and a sense of shared responsibility.
But even Inam's business partner,
Yeah.
who's a local Emirati,
Right.
he seemed kind of critical of the excesses
He did.
that he sees among, like, the new Arabs.
The new Arabs, yeah.
It sounded like there's some tension there
Absolutely.
between the old ways of doing business,
Right. The traditional ways.
and the new realities.
Of a globalized economy.
Yeah.
It's a classic clash
Yeah.
between tradition and modernity.
And then there's Remy.
Oh, Remy, the young hotel manager.
Yeah, in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
His story really highlighted that clash between generations.
It did. He's all about the latest technology.
Yeah, gadgets, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, his father, who built his business the old-fashioned way,
Right.
is still using paper and pen.
I love that detail.
It's such a great visual.
It is.
It's like the old school versus the new school.
Exactly. And I think that's playing out all over the Gulf.
Yeah.
You have this younger generation that's globally connected, tech savvy, eager to embrace new ideas.
Right.
And then you have the older generation who built their success on more traditional values.
Yeah.
Hard work, personal relationships, a strong sense of community.
But even though Remy's father is from that older generation,
Right.
he still seemed to embrace those core values
He did.
of trust and partnership.
Absolutely. He runs his business like a family.
Yeah, he treats his employees with respect, fairness.
He even calls Remy's boss uncle.
Yeah, it was really heartwarming to see that that those values still hold strong
Yeah.
for so many people.
Even amidst all the rapid change.
Yeah, even amidst all the change and development.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that the human element is still so important in any economic system.
Right, no matter how technologically advanced it becomes.
Yeah. Technology can't replace everything.
Unfortunately, the documentary also reminds us that there's a darker side to all this.
Yeah.
To the economic boom of the Gulf.
Yeah.
We see the skyscrapers and the luxury hotels.
Yeah. All the glitz and glamour.
But underneath it all,
Yeah.
there's this huge underclass of guest workers
Right.
who are often exploited.
Yeah. And denied basic rights.
It's a stark reminder that economic progress doesn't always equal social justice.
It's a really important point, and it brings us back to that question we've been circling around.
Good.
Can Islamic finance,
Yeah.
with its focus on ethical conduct and social responsibility, actually play a role in addressing these inequalities?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And I don't know if the documentary gives us a clear answer.
It doesn't, but I think that's what makes it so thought-provoking.
Okay.
It leaves us with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Which forces us to really grapple with the complexity of these issues.
Right, like it's not trying to give us a simple solution.
Exactly. It's saying, hey, we're not going to tell you what to think.
Right.
We're going to show you different perspectives, highlight the challenges, and let you come to your own conclusions.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It's not just about understanding how Islamic finance works.
Right.
It's about exploring a different way of thinking about money and its role in our lives.
It challenges us to think about our own values.
Absolutely.
And what kind of world we want to create.
With our financial decisions.
Exactly. And on that note, we're going to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into Islamic finance.
Sounds good.
But don't go anywhere. In the final part, we're going to pull together some key takeaways from our conversation and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
So we've been on this journey exploring Islamic finance.
Yeah, it's a fascinating world.
It is a system that's like deeply rooted in tradition, but also like grappling with the modern global economy.
It is. There's this tension, between maintaining those ethical principles and the pressure to compete in the global marketplace.
Yeah, it feels like a constant balancing act.
It is trying to stay true to those values while also navigating like the realities of modern business.
And the documentary doesn't shy away from the fact that there's no easy answer.
Yeah, there are disagreements even within the Islamic finance community itself about what's truly compliant.
Yeah. Like, remember that whole controversy?
Oh, yeah.
With that scholar claiming that, like, 85% of Islamic loans weren't even Sharia compliant.
Right. It really shook things up.
That was a big deal.
It was. And it highlighted that, even Islamic finance is vulnerable to human interpretation.
Right.
And, maybe even manipulation.
Like, who gets to decide what's truly Islamic?
Exactly. Yeah, whose interests are being served?
It's a good reminder that Islamic finance isn't some perfect solution.
No, it's not a magic bullet.
It's still a human system.
Yeah, it's subject to the same temptations as any other.
But I think that's also what makes it so interesting.
I agree. It's not about presenting some utopian ideal.
Right.
It's about trying to find a better way.
Yeah. And I loved how the documentary brought that to life through the personal stories.
Yeah, those stories were so powerful.
Like Zakaria in Turkey.
Oh, yeah.
Working his way up.
From nothing?
Yeah, from an untrained worker to a manager.
It's proof that those principles can make a real difference.
It's inspiring.
It is. It shows that Islamic finance, when practiced with integrity, can create opportunities and uplift people.
But then we saw the other side of that.
Yeah, the documentary didn't shy away from that.
The exploitation of the guest workers in the Gulf.
That was tough to watch.
It makes you think, can a system really be ethical?
Right.
If it's not addressing those injustices?
Yeah. Good intentions aren't enough.
Right. It comes down to action and accountability.
It does. And that brings us to this question of responsibility.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for making sure that Islamic finance lives up to its ideals?
Is it the scholars? The businesses?
So the governments, the consumers?
Yeah, it feels like it's a collective effort.
It is. Everybody has a role to play.
Consumers need to ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
Businesses need to prioritize ethics.
Not just profits.
And governments need to create regulations
that protect the vulnerable.
It's like this whole ecosystem.
It is, yeah.
That needs to work together.
If one part fails, the whole thing suffers.
And the documentary also challenges us to think bigger.
Yeah. See the bigger picture.
It's not just for Muslims. It's for anyone who's looking for a different way.
A different way of thinking about money.
Yeah, and its role in society.
It's a challenge to the status quo.
Yeah.
A call for a more just system.
So as we wrap up,
okay,
can a financial system rooted in religious principles offer a real alternative?
The million-dollar question.
What do you think?
Honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
The documentary shows that Islamic finance is complex.
It is.
It's evolving. It has potential.
Yeah.
But it also faces challenges.
I think the takeaway is that we all have a role to play.
We do in shaping the future of finance.
Whether we choose to engage with Islamic finance personally or not.
Right.
We can all learn from its values.
Absolutely.
We can all ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to create?
Yeah, with our financial decisions.
What kind of impact do we want our money to have?
Those are the important questions.
And hopefully this deep dive has given you, the listener, some food for thought.
Yeah, as you navigate the world of finance.
We've only scratched the surface.
We have.
But hopefully we've sparked your curiosity.
And inspired you to keep exploring.
There's a whole world out there.
Keep learning. Keep asking questions.
Keep pushing for a better financial future.
Absolutely.
And until next time, keep diving.